with Sergeant Pepper.
Oh.
For her, the magic went out of it. When for us, for me anyway, the magic came into it.
Yeah.
But then
I thought it was great from the beginning, but just got
Yeah,
better.
see, I liked it all
better
too. It just got better and better, exactly.
That's right. Not for me.
Michelle, it's true. I remember driving off to the Navy in '65. I think it was Michelle. Just hearing it, and crying myself, not wanting to go.
But a lot of it to do was incredibly straightforward and some of that same influence on me that Tom Dooley was very straightforward, direct. This was not, of course it was popular, of course it was produced, of course it was vast sums of money, but it was something that spoke very directly to the audience.
That isn't true with respect to the first records. There might have been vast sums of money behind their promotion, but there was not vast sums of money in their production.
Oh, yeah, recorded in
The early
one
singles.
day and all that stuff. Yeah, no, but I mean, as time went on.
Yeah, well,
But still, there's something very real emotional impact.
Well, what did you guys think, Jeff Wainer, let me switch to you for a second now. What did you think of a great, maybe a case in point, maybe you'll have an interesting story, the Kingston Trio, for instance, and that type of music, being exposed to the traditional musicians that you were. What was your take on the Kingston Trio and the journey
I
they did, the
prefer not
highway?
to answer, if that's all right with you.
Answer, refer to them all as a class.
Oh, it's
Yeah,
so
reference.
difficult, and it's so difficult, and as with so many things in this world, it's all intertwined with sex. Because I listened to the music as a little child. I went on the field trips with my parents. I was angry because we had to go places where there weren't any bathrooms. My brother at
No
age...
baseball, no swimming
No
pool.
baseball, no swimming
nothing
pools,
to do.
nothing to do, no fun. Why are we here? This is boring.
Boring.
And my brother was 5, I think. He was 5. We went to the southern mountains, and he came back weeping because he couldn't go to the Privy. This is in deeply western North Carolina in the mountains, because there was a pig in it, and he couldn't sit on it. Go to the bathroom, there was a pig in the Privy. This was the level of acceptance of folk music, and terrible food and all. I just wasn't a fan. And yet, on the other hand, my father, who was a YMCA executive as a profession, was a semi-professional singer and really used his music to tell the story of the people that he met, and probably was one of the first people who had an ear for trying to sing with style, that is, sing with the traditional style in his mind. If you learned it from somebody in western North Carolina, get that edge in your voice. If you learn it from a North Woodsman, try to sound like that North Woodsman, because that style has a lot to do with the message of the song. So I heard all that, and I accepted it. I never remember feeling, this is trash, this is not something with which I want to be involved. This just was there, and it was good. And we traveled a lot because of it to neat places. But Kingston Trio, when Tom Dooley hit, just another aside before I get to that, when I was 13 then, in 1956, my father decided it was time for me to learn guitar. And he tried to get me to take lessons, and I hated it, and I dropped it, and I remember starting again when I was maybe 15, 16, learned some things, didn't like it, stopped it. So he let me sing in a glee club instead of taking lessons. But when the Kingston Trio hit in 59, 58, 59, and then this kind of music became romantic and socially, it was a currency. It had a currency to it. I wanted to learn more and did. So I was of the time, I was 16, 17, 18 and going off to college where people were playing and I could play and actually earn some money doing it. And at the same time I had this storehouse of songs that other people didn't have, and I was using some of them. So it's hard to tell what, for a long time, I sang singer-songwriter songs. I didn't have any desire to write. But I would sing other people's songs as well as traditional stuff. And it's been a slow process now. Jeff wrote songs for a while and decided for many reasons to stop doing it. And as time has gone on, we have become almost exclusively purveyors of tradition.
You didn't answer the question. Which was
Why I tell him he should have gone. You should become a musician. He'll go to law school.
That's right. I'm a politician.
Well, I guess, because you reacted really vigorously to the question, and then you gave this marvelously. I guess the question was, in light of what the type of music you were exposed to and what your parents did as an avocation, when you heard people singing those songs in these nice smooth harmonies, what did you think about it? What did your parents think about it? What did they think about the sound of Tom Dooley by the Kingston Trio as opposed to any issues of
Right, it
copyright
is-
royalties or what have you?
I think for Jeff Wainer, it is a very specific question when you bring up the subject of Tom Dooley, and it's a different subject
different-
for any other kid in America.
Yeah,
We were knocked out and not good. But I sort of did answer the question as what did the Kingston Trio mean to me? They were a vehicle to enthuse me
okay.
about the music from outside of my own family, and I
Okay.
needed that
All right.
jolt.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because you're not,
Because just the family stuff probably would not have carried, or I would have sung, but it wouldn't have been a profession.
Right.
But the need to, the seeing that it was sexy,
Yeah, oh yeah.
that it was a currency,
Yeah.
all coalesced to make me do this. For Kingston Trio, standing in my room, I said, Mom, listen! They were running downstairs because there was a song my father had been singing since 1939. Every time he had a program,
21 years.
he sang Tom Dooley along with something from John Galusha and something from the Outer Banks, from Sue Thomas, from Black Woman Out There. And he sung Hold My Hand, Lord, he's got the whole world in his hand, until Mahalia Jackson came out with a hit of it, and he kind of let that go. And there had not been communication, really, very much between Frank Prophet, the source of the song, and his family. And my family, it had kind of lay dormant from 1952 or 3, the last time we were in the mountains, until this song hit. And suddenly, Frank Prophet's first reaction was he wanted to get his rifle and go find the guys because they were making fun of the mountain people. And my father actually went down to talk to him about this. So it became a cause célèbre with just between Frank Prophet and Frank Warner. And from there, we know. I mean, there was eventually a court case in Lomax and Warner and Capitol Records and the settlement, and enough money came for Frank Prophet to build a house. But our reaction to that was it was going on out here. And I think for people who have had a strong interest in traditional music or traditional dance or traditional tunes, there's always been this steady underground of interest in the music. And the Kingston Trio and the Brothers Four and Joan Baez and all that went on over the top.
It's not very different from the way I feel about James Taylor singing. Absolutely love to buy all the records, have a wonderful time, but he can come out with The Water Is Wide, and I think it's great, but it's not,
Right.
it doesn't change my love for Louis Killen singing the song. So parallel worlds, which is also a Bruce Jackson song. But
It was a special moment, but I don't know how, I can't elaborate any, certainly not more interestingly.
Sure.
The impact of Kingston Trio. I don't know, the transition from the time when we were shocked, knocked down, didn't know how to react, to the time I spent money to go see them in Westbury Music Fair. I can't trace that emotional
I understand.
change.
But it's hard to know. I think other press, although Jeff would have been there, but so long ago they wouldn't remember what Frank and Warner felt about that music that was going on. What we know is that Frank was on the board of the Newport Folk Festival and worked with all those people to make traditional music absolutely integral, an important part of that festival. So you could not go see Joan Baez without seeing Doc Boggs.
Right.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about the festival, whether
Whereas the current Newport Folk Festival is just occasional band. It only
It's just
sends
a-
the performers.
no,
They
it's much more.
get somebody like Beausoleil, but they wouldn't get the weird old guys out of Baez to do that, which is a real tragedy.
What did, I was going to ask you about Newport, and I don't know, you guys are maybe were younger, so we're coming into this, first impressions with things like Newport. I don't know if that's true or not, but that seems like it was really over the top in terms of popular entertainers with the evening concerts and Dylan and Peter, Paul, and Mary. I mean, was there a sense that that was something entirely different from the traditional music that you guys liked?
Well, I remember
is it the same stuff? That's the question, I guess. It all gets lumped into as folk music. Is it the same stuff? Why is it all there?
Well, Jeff, once again, Jeff doesn't count here because he was backstage.
Mhm.
So he was hanging around with people that parents knew, and goggle-eyed, with hanging around both with somebody like Sonny Terry and with
Everly
Pete
Brothers.
Seeger and all these people all at the same time.
Or
But that, I was thinking somewhat earlier. That was '69. I was thinking it's the '63s and the '64s, because I was out there in the audience, and I can remember sitting there. I think I may have mentioned this to you at the conference. Sitting there, being absolutely excited, all a tingle, because I was going to get in one evening concert, going to get to hear. I'm making this up. I don't know exactly. I mean, I remember it was Doc Boggs, but it was Brian Mickey and Sam Terry and people.
Clarence Ashley.
It's possible. Because the
Watson.
years blend together for me. Yeah, I mean, be very excited about hearing Doc Watson and not even knowing who Bob Dylan was. I mean, so what does that make it? 64 probably. Yeah, I didn't know who he was. It's just not something that I even then particularly cared about. Once I got off into caring about traditional music, all of that stuff became incidental. My interest in songwriting
Don't
came.
hit the table, please.
Oh,
Don't
sorry.
hit it, no. Affects, not only does it hurt the table, it affects the tape deck.
It came from much more from the rock stuff and the folk rock
You
stuff.
okay with coffee?
Beatles and
No.
Beatles and the Rolling Stones and all that crowd had much more influence on me than the pop music, than any of the folk pop stuff, the electric stuff, and the Birds, all that stuff. Big influence.
So you weren't, I mean, the fact that there was all this singer-songwriter, folk music stuff going on, didn't influence on you so much. And I want to take a look, there's this political stuff that was going on between 61 and 62.
You bet.
63.
Yeah.
Almost what was coming out of my mouth.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one or two.
And how did that have an influence, or were you just,
Had no influence on me. Absolutely. Not again, I was a Republican family, so I can remember going to visit my aunt in New Hampshire, and my cousin was terminally pathologically gregarious, always meet people. That's somebody who had a house up there, wanted us to come up with. As we were driving in the car, he said, he was 10 years old, she was 25 or something. He said, listen, these people are really so much. I thought I was going to get some kind of disease. I thought it wasn't. But the whole Phil Oakes thing, Bob Dylan, I mean, it was not that it wasn't there, not that it didn't exist, but I was not moved to sing that stuff, although I was definitely part of the stuff in the 60s, but the music.
Jeff Warner, good part
Peter
of it.
Bellamy recently did a very good article, just before his death, did a great interview for Sing Out. I think it was Sing Out, it could have been Folk Roots. I can certainly send to you. Where he talks about the usurpation of traditional music by the political left.
Oh, I'd love to see that.
Yeah.
And I hadn't really thought about it. I mean, there's a sort of a nice segue from traditional music and talking about the things with which people are really involved, to the IWW, into Woody Guthrie, into Pete Seeger, into the common, I mean, the People's Song Group in the 30s and all. And the political music for me and my family was always, why are they trying to put that on top of folk music? Why are they doing that? That's not folk music. And my mother, who was outspoken, would say it sometimes too loudly. I'm going to have to move 3 or 4 seats away. And so it became a sort of a family theme that, and to this day, I sort of keep it in me that I'm essentially apolitical, at least contemporarily apolitical. There's a political message in the song, very much so, but it has the distance of time. You can choose what to learn from it. I'm not proselytizing. But this music proselytized the stuff that was the Pete Seeger songs. Well, we'll take the good tunes and let's rewrite them and parody things and use the style and put a message in it to get something effective.
Nothing wrong in that.
Right. And
Yeah.
I'm probably
farther left now. I mean, I'm certainly farther left now than I was, because I also came from a sort of Republican family. There's a book in the 60s. I just saw it in the bookstore the other day, and I'm really happy.
Developing quite a huge library, so I don't know. I probably read it. What's
It's about it's actually it.
My Song is My Weapon by Robbie Lieberman.
It's about the lefties and
I might have it here.
something like Great Day Coming.
Great Day Coming is by Serge Denisov. I've read that book. I've read a number of books on that topic. I have read Great Day Coming, and my conclusion after reading all of them is that they all, different authors, each writing their independent book-length treatises on the subject of the politicization, if I say that right, of traditional music, and I came to the conclusion that all of them don't come to a resolution of how it happened, and that the best way I could synthesize it is simply a concerted effort by some Communist Party people, some labor people, to adapt a musical form which they thought would give them a connection to the people. Mm-hmm. And one of the interesting things that I picked up from a number of the readings that I've done is that, to a large degree, it didn't work for them. They misjudged, because the urban people they wanted to reach were interested in Tin Pan Alley, and were interested in, at least that's the thesis of a number of writers I've seen. They were interested in the big bands. They weren't interested. The people that they wanted to.
But you can say it did work.
Well,
in 1963,
it permeated an intelligentsia, and that's who a lot of the people putting on the Newport Folk Festival were.
I mean, in terms of organizing.
It didn't work as an organizing tool tremendously much with workers. That's what it didn't do.
But it did in the minds. I mean,
eventually.
And Molly Jackson and what's the name of the woman who wrote "Which Side Are You On?" and unimportant. Just saw it today. And after all, there's always been a tradition of people writing, rewriting songs for outside. There's nothing new in that. I get a little wary when people start talking about, well, usurpation, because in fact it was just a long tradition of taking that. So people like Doc Boggs and Roscoe Holden were taking older melodies and putting new words to it about the working in minds.
It's a stylistic thing, I think, is the real link between the political music of the left and traditional music. Real people using real tunes that are out of tradition, talking about real issues. The real issue of most of the traditional people themselves was a one person, either looking back to the old stories which had lessons for them, or talking about their farming problems.
Daily life.
That's daily life, or their love, or their murder in that neighborhood, but rarely talking about organizing.
Yeah.
Or the strife of the working man, or the look for a new day except out of religion. And that was what changed.
Peter's comment in there, but if you look at the number of political songs that you collect, speaking of English songs, some incredibly low percentage of English songs. There are love songs and English songs.
Drinking songs, and try to feel, as Peter said, trying to feel better. Sing to make you feel better about what's going on, not to feel worse.
To revel in the horrendous issues of the day, but to escape the issues
of course,
of the day in part. Yeah.
We forget that Karl Marx did not think of the United States as a capitalist country, because one of his definitions of capitalism was that workers have absolutely no way out. Whereas Americans have money and land and space and can farm and have their own chickens. It's a very different world. So the kinds of songs, and Cecil Sharp, the collector in 19 teens, talks about it in his introduction to English folk songs
for the Southern Appalachians.
That what people in the mountains what we saw as English, we also recognize a very, very different lifestyle, exuberance and optimism living English working class. So that both Marx and Cecil Sharp, totally different perspective, saw an English class docility that it did not find in the United States. So it could be that you could make that if you made that same kind of list of American songs that Peter might find more political songs, but it was an attempt by people to take a song and make something happen with it, which is wonderful. But we sort of, I mean, if the world of folk music is represented by Pete and Mike Seeger from the same family, different mothers, same father, you sort of have, I'm never really a Pete Seeger fan. I mean, yes, I was a Pete Seeger fan. I loved to watch Pete Seeger. I loved to sing along. I respected him for his stand and this and that. But in terms of music, personally, I was definitely Mike Seeger, gone away Mike Seeger freak from first on. Nothing political.
As an aside, I've got to
No
tell
idea.
you Archie's discussion of Mike and Pete Seeger, and I enjoy it, but I don't know if you have the same reaction I have. In some ways, I think it's almost an academic game that Archie plays when he discusses these two. He has decided that one can properly term Mike the more political of the two. Mike as having a greater political impact. You're nodding, so it's reaching you already, perhaps. Or maybe
Pulling
you've heard
at
this.
it, but I have to reach. But
Okay, what he feels that what Mike does, and I'm going to really loosely paraphrase because it's a long time now since Archie said this to me, but that Mike has taken the music of an indigenous class of people and kept it alive and kept a culture, kept a society alive in a way that Pete has never done, and that ultimately that is more of a profound political act than anything that Pete has done. That's a real quick, loose translation of what Archie told us. Do you think it's accurate?
Yeah, and Archie is, he's not a big Pete fan.
He's not a big
personally,
Pete fan.
quite frankly. So I think that also, just as an aside, listening to him over the course.
He thinks there's lots of contradictions in Pete's political posture. Probably true.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's plenty to be said about Pete.
What were you nodding about, Jeff?
in terms of conservative, I think it's an ultimately conservative act that Mike has done in trying to say, much like I think the Country Dance and Song Society has done with dance styles, they're trying to say, wait, whoa, yes, it's great to create, but let's know what has gone on before so we can learn from it as we create the new in the old
Oh, I think
style.
Archie would agree with that. I think that's...
So I was just trying to reach for conservative, which is not necessarily a political term,
Right.
to overlay that on the why Archie Green thinks that what Pete has done is, what
Right.
Mike has done is more political. Effective, or you could, things that Mike have done, as Mike says, there are more people playing traditional fiddle tunes now in the country than ever have been before, and I think maybe Mike has a lot to do with that.
He's really it.
So is that a political act?
Well, I don't know if it's a political act. As I said, in some ways, I think Archie, it's
Because Pete is always termed as the political one, or the one that, who's most associated with it, and quite frankly, most of the Archie's feelings towards
I
Pete.
don't think we think of folklorists as politicos. We don't think of them as doing political acts, even though often what they do has a far-reaching cultural effect.
Yeah, so is what Mike is doing
Preservationists.
political? I guess it just depends on your definition of Archie's views,
It's a funny kind of statement.
pulling
Someone
a...
who's
keeping a
attempting
cultural
to be
line.
provocative.
Well, I said, I think to some degree it might have been an academic's game, is what
But-
he's doing.
But I mean, I have absolutely not the slightest idea from anything that Mike Seeger has ever done musically that would lead me to have the foggiest idea what his contempt, what his political stand. Absolutely no idea. Any more than I would know by looking at a Frank Stella painting how he was going to vote. Absolutely no idea. Because his interest has been in the art and the culture and the devotion to it, and the conservatists' devotion to keeping the culture alive. But very, as he is personally, very, very hard to read. Whereas, and you who have spent time with Pete Seeger found Pete extremely difficult to know and to read. His political stance. is a public person, even in his living room.
Well, and that is, we've
Whereas
both.
Mike is a private person, even on the stage.
And at this point, we've only met both of them, but having read so much about them, I mean, what your comment about Pete Seeger, it's filtered into everything written about him by now. I mean, it's and he's always just a public person. His closest friends, so-called, will tell you if you get them to.
The place where
it's hard to know him past a certain point. You can read that in his biography, but he alludes to that or states it pretty explicitly at times. Yeah.
I mean, for both of them to have it's a similar personality.
There's a
I
similar
heard him
reason.
speak once just before he died, and
Uh-huh.
I didn't understand a word.
Yeah.
It was some very amazing, deep, hard-ass theory of music.
But
That's a whole other issue.
But a very similar
Yeah.
reserve in
Uh-huh.
both of those guys. That is just for a casual meeting such as we've had in terms of wanting to talk to them about this. It was very difficult to get comfortable. I mean, and very, very tough. You don't know if they'd rather that you just go away and stop bothering them and they're being polite. It's just hard to know.
Well, you know what, when
It's just hard.
Mike, I don't remember, were you at the field collecting?
Yeah,
workshop?
I did go to that,
Because
yeah.
Mike had that statement about the folklorists had missed the boat on revival singers because they were the ones who kept the music along.
Yeah,
The truth is that
Let's say what
Mike
was the
Seeger
next
himself
question,
is
right?
probably the undervalued person there because he's done so much and he really, if it were not for Mike Seeger, maybe somebody else would have come along and done that. But it's hard to imagine how exactly they would have come past. He should be respected and he should somehow have gotten some kind of financial remuneration for what he's done, and he's gotten none other than for 53 cents for a record unrounded.
Mike Seeger is by and large unknown to the mass public.
Yes.
Do either of you have
Not
any-
by and large completely.
No.
We were at a school one time at a custodian, we were doing this music, and he was trying to figure out what it is that we do, and he couldn't get a handle on it. So I said, well, Pete Seeger, Pete, we sort of do. Have you ever heard of Mike Seeger? He said, no. Well, you Pete Seeger's brother? Are they related to Bob?
Bob.
We're talking about
Yeah.
unknown people here, and when
Yeah.
you talk about unknown people, you're really talking about unknown people. We're
Yeah.
talking about Mike Seeger.
Yeah, exactly. So, do either of you guys have any thoughts on whether things like Peter, Paul, and Mary's early records, when they do reworkings of traditional songs, and people hear that, or Bob Dylan's first record or his latest record, does that stuff play any role at all that's meaningful, that you guys think is meaningful in bringing traditional music out to the populace, or is it just go over the heads of everybody?
Well,
They don't learn anything from it.
This may sound like a tangent, but I think it's related, because I was in college in North Carolina in the 60s, and all the political stuff that was going on there at the time, it was also interesting fact that people knew about the New West City Ramblers, and Alan Jabor was there at the same time. This was Chapelville, Durham. And Alan was not the first person to go out and collect fiddle tunes exclusively, but was largely responsible for it. Started introducing people around there into the tunes. And as a result of that, started a little band. And as a result of the local square dances and the Friday night parties every week, people got more and more people coming together, more and more playing dances, more and more people starting to go collect and going to the fiddler conventions. But there was also very much tied up with the politics at the time, because these were white kids who were involved in political in the 60s, but the way that they most easily got in touch with that was by going into the mountains to rediscover or find their own culture. Bill Hicks wrote a wonderful article about this in Old Time Herald, exactly like that. But I was not from North Carolina, but I was part of that. And it was an intensely political scene. It was mostly an anti-war scene, but once you got beyond that, where these kids left, were they right? I mean, no, they were just normal kids who were playing music and going back and collecting songs. Didn't have any of the edge, and there was no thought of going back into the mountains to change anything, because they were interested was in Greensboro and 78 or 79. Well, they were all former classmates of mine, people who killed in that Klan showdown.
Oh, was that
Greensboro.
right?
Really?
Yeah.
But they were not, they were incidentally involved in music, you know. So, but what my point is that the two things were intimately intertwined.
Which two things?
The two things of the politics and the music.
Right.
People who were listening to Phil Oakes were also starting to learn fiddle.
But the question was.
Yeah.
You're right. I started to say, was this going to
Tangent.
sound like a tangent?
But-
I don't think that Peter, Paul, and Mary had much to do with it.
But you have to look again. People like Peggy Bulger, who's now on the Folk Alliance Board and who's a folklorist with the Southern Arts Federation, is a diehard folklorist, PhD folklorist, knows exactly about preservation and cultural diversity and importance and all that. But she came in as a singer. Why did she come in as a singer? Maybe she came in because of Peter, Paul, and Mary. How do we know why people come to the folk revival to be singers? Would they know there's an attraction of performing or writing of the ego, and they get caught by something universal? But did they come because of Peter, Paul, and Mary? Maybe they did. Bob Dylan? Maybe they did. A lot of people
But it's
did.
hard to know. It seems to me that then and now, people get involved in that kind of stuff because they're looking to perform, looking for an audience. And it's the only kind of music you can get up on stage by yourself with a guitar and play.
Yeah.
And you can play it with a little coffee house. If you want to play in rock, you want to do rock music, you have to get a band, and you automatically have to start bigger, and you automatically have to charge more money. So people start, in my, which I've even used, one of the famous lines in one of the workshops. I was sardonically, sarcastically saying folk music in the larger sense of the word.
How to define folk music this was.
Yeah, what people do until they get better or whatever.
No, it's what they do until they can do something better.
Which is to get a band and, you know, play some real music, play some, get a recording contract. I'm not sure that the folk music part of it has anything to do with it.
Well, glib question. What do you guys call yourself? People say, what do you guys do?
We sing traditional songs.
Okay. Are you a folk singer? Does that word ever come out?
Yeah, if we care to get into the definition, we will.
Okay.
But yes, we're folk singers.
Yeah.
But we tend to use traditional music when we're initiating the conversation.
Yes, that's
We'll
right.
use traditional music.
I want to diverge a little bit, just ask them, so interested, because part of this is concentrated on church.
Mhm.
Did you go there? Did you go to the village in the early 60s? Did you?
Oh, yeah, we were on Long Island.
We were both in
Yeah,
Long
Long Island,
Island.
so I'm
We were old
wondering-
enough to get on the train.
Sort of just ahead of, just before. I could have, well, I was a teenager, but I didn't go in. Now, once again, I was apolitical.
You were born in 42?
I was born in 43.
43.
And I was apolitical, and I thought it was very political. So I
In
was also
part,
pretty
but
cautious.
people like, people like John Hurt and Gary Davis and Brownie McGee were playing down in the Gaslight.
Yes,
City,
but that
what
was
have you.
by
I
then-
thought you meant Village Square,
No.
Sunday afternoons.
No, did you mean that, or did you mean
I want to
the,
know a general sense.
did you go down there geographically to
Oh, we
check
would
out
go,
the scene?
yeah, occasionally to the
Yeah.
30s Folk City, and yeah, but it was an outing to the city, and
Okay.
who you go to see.
And it wasn't close enough that you casually go. I mean, there were a lot of people who did. But I think I went in to the village for music about 5 times. I think I went in to see the New West City Ramblers, Mike Seaver,
But even they,
Mississippi John Hurt, Brownie McGee, and Sonny Terry.
it was the Friends of Old Time Music, and it
I
was
gonna
also
say,
Israel Young.
Izzy Young and John Cohen
There
were
we
putting
went.
these things on in the Folklore Center.
But that's very different from the Gaslight.
It's
and
very,
all.
yes, it's very different, yeah, okay.
Because they were putting on the Louis Killens and the Norman Kennedys and some black musicians
Yeah.
at Izzy's Folk Shop would go
Right.
up there. And the Friends of Old Time Music, I think that's what they were called,
That's
put
what
on
they're
the New
called,
West
yeah.
City Ramblers. And I went to see them there, but I don't consider that going and paying hard cash
Okay,
at a
okay,
bar at night.
yeah.
That we didn't do very often.
The entertainment part of it was not.
You would go to Izzy's store though?
Yeah,
to
often.
hear
You
those
would go to
concerts,
Izzy's.
yeah.
Many, many times.
Okay.
And Izzy was very political.
Izzy says he wasn't political at all.
Yeah, Izzy-
That's, I don't know, it's hard to tell without the
But
revisionism is set in.
Yeah, that-
How do you mean he was political? What
Yes.
prompts the statement? What,
I don't necessarily mean an activist.
Okay.
But he, I mean, I met him just a couple of times when I was a kid, so I don't know. But what I heard was he was very involved in issues, at least talking about it, and so there was a certain kind of clientele that involved himself who he knew and hung around with on a common basis. I mean, I don't really mean activist, but certainly was part of the scene, part of those, like once again, part of that parallel world.
He was an activist within his scene. He'd be an activist on various committees of the Folk Singers Guild. That was one thing that was going on down there for a while.
The type of person, and we've actually gotten to know him. Izzy came over and stayed with us in office.
You got to know him pretty well.
Got in December. And Izzy is the kind of person now that writes us a letter once a week too. I think he wants to leave Sweden. Actually, he's done with it. He'd like to be back to the States. But in any event, Izzy is a passionate person, and when he gets an idea in his mind, no matter what it is, he will be focused on that. And I think that's probably why people think Izzy was political, because if he got an idea in his mind, he can't stop thinking about it. He's just so driven.
And when they tried to ban folk singing, banjo playing in Washington Square Park, Izzy was a leader in the demonstrations and a vocal presence in the demonstrations. But he claims, and that's the only way I can put it, it's so astonishing to me that I can't say anything other than that he claims, I assume he's telling you the truth, he claims to have been ignorant well into the 60s of the historical linkages between traditional music and the political left. He says, I didn't know anything about this. I just like music. I didn't know anything about it. And I don't know if that's true or not.
People who were in his circle certainly were political.
Oh, yeah. Well, so did I.
So did I. That's
Doreen.
why
So did
we said, this is Izzy 30 years later and is being away from the States for 20 years.
Yeah.
And certainly he put on a lot of apolitical, traditional music.
That's what he says his love was. He says,
Yeah.
I didn't
That's
know
why
anything.
we went.
Yeah.
His first love was dance. And
Yeah.
he just kind of moved into the music part.
Yeah, no, and what he did in terms of his own concert promotion work was consistent with his comment about politics. He did not throw himself into running a singers bureau for the local demonstration against whatever political issue there was in the day. He threw himself into terms of old time music and selling songbooks and what have you.
I just have some vague memory of it going in there with Jeff Barnes one time. She was fulminating about something. Definitely not just music, but I think I could be.
I would like to have had seen him in those days, because I've talked to a number of people about the Izzy of 1961, and knowing him now, we met him about less than a year ago, and we've been in very regular contact with him because I think he liked us and he adopts you. That's just his method of Izzy knows people. Izzy knows everyone that he's liked in 40 years of meeting people, or 50 years of if he liked you, he still knows you, and had an opportunity to maintain contact with you. And he's
Like the old world guys.
and he's this, a good-hearted, open-hearted guy. And everyone I talk to knows these images of Izzy running around the store yelling, "Schmuck, goddammit!"
Or no comments at all, which is put on in the store. It's kind of funny because somebody would walk into the store and he'd say, "Here, I'll be back in 20 minutes. Could you just wait here?" It's like he's never seen this person before.
Do we need to talk about the country dancing songs society?
Go ahead, yeah, I'd like to do that.
It's hard to know what an influence they have had, and their linkages go back so far to really directly to Cecil Sharp, who in 1898-99 discovered, quote unquote, found and led to the revival of Morris dance. And it may well be that through the Country Dancing Song Society of America, Morris dance has taken off rather than through what has gone on in England. There's a lot more interest in Morris here, I think, than there's in Britain. And in 1901 with folk song and the establishment of the Folk Song Society and the English Dance Society, coming over here, setting up the branch in Boston, the 1930s developing the English Folk Dance and Song Society of America, which became the Country Dancing Song Society.
first folk music week, which was in 1956 at Pinewoods Camp. There had been folk singing going on right through in the 30s and 40s because of Cecil Sharp's work and his merging of the dance and song. But at last now there was a time that was going to be devoted to the song part of it, and then the dance music part of it. And that's still going strong there. People who learned at Pinewoods spread all through the country and started their own dances. Dance musicians learned there. Now there are dance camps all over the country, but the first one, there was Pinewoods Camp. That is, there were things going on in settlements. Brasstown, North Carolina, was Olive Dane Campbell and her husband, who was the first to show Cecil Sharp music from the Southern Appalachians. She came up, she found out he was in the country in 1916 and brought him songs that she had collected from Western North Carolina, and he said, "This is good stuff. Show me the way to get down there." She had been working in Western North Carolina to help people there preserve their own traditions of crafts, and had started a school in Brasstown. And then there's the one in Kentucky. I'm momentarily blanking, Jim. Virginia.
Heinlein.
No, that's. It may or may not. I'll think of it in a second. So there were probably the schools there in the teens and early part of the century. But in terms of being open to the public and seeking people to come and learn about traditional stuff, that really started at Pinewoods in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, and then with folk music in the 60s and 50s.
Is that one of the first ones that you first put in the camp?
I went with the first folk music week because my father was director of it. Jack Langstaff, who was a concert singer, he was opera trained, but had grown up with Cecil Sharp's music, and is really a reason why Christmas Revels has, which is a sort of a grassroots Christmas celebratory performance that happens in many cities around the country now, is going. Asked my father to come and run that folk music week, and I went as a staff child in '56, and essentially fell in love with the place. And then I think that Jeff's and my friendship comes as much from Pinewoods as anything
Yeah, it
else.
was not for school.
Because
there's so
63,
many
when did
different
you go
kinds.
first?
63. First, so many different kinds of music there. When Jeff and I knew each other, even as adults, a couple years into college, what we did musically was so different that under other circumstances we would never have gotten together. But because of Pinewoods Camp, because of all the diversity, I was familiar with that stuff. He was familiar with this other stuff, and so it was a common ground. So it was very important to us personally. Apart from what we already talked about meeting all these people. Talk a little bit about, first I'd like to get some more coffee, but I'd like to talk a little bit about there's absolutely no way
Good word.
for
Say it
Hollywood.
again.
Yeah, how do you mean it was
The dance-
uncorruptible?
The dance revolution, and we're not talking about club dancing, which has its own revolution.
Right.
There are probably 18, for every person who's doing contra dancing and square dancing in America, in the traditional music, live music, there's probably 18 people doing club dancing to record it. We don't even talk about that phenomenon. But just the phenomenon of the dance music here in this area and all through New England, Jeff's talking about, is pervasive, it's growing, and as you said, incorruptible.
There's no way for Hollywood or Timpanelli or any other, not euphemism, what's the word, any other, anyway, it can't be used, can't be marketed any more than the New Lost City Ramblers were marketable. I mean, you can create a songwriter, and the songwriter can change, and fads will come and go. But sitting around playing tunes with your pals, it's just what people do. And that's what, you know. Or when Archie Green, but folk music is what you do when you're.
No, Norm Cohen.
Norm Cohen.
Norm Cohen, of course, the definition of folk music in long steel rail is any song which is performed by a person in a non-commercial act for their own enjoyment. He had to come to that conclusion because all of this recorded music from the 20s and 30s about train wrecks went from Vernon Dalhart into the tradition, and people sang it for their own fun, in the same way that Frank Prophet did. sang Jimmy Rogers songs and Carter Family songs. He heard them, he liked them, he sang them for himself. They were commercial recordings. No, my point is that in these latter days of the 20th century, there is an enormous amount of folk music being done out there in exactly the way that it was done 60 years ago, but by different people in different contexts, and not necessarily doing music that was in their families.
And writing in the tradition.
Mm-hmm.
You know, these banjo tunes and fiddle tunes that are getting written today are right out of the tradition of fiddle tunes, right? Early last century.
So that, for example, in Cape Breton, that very, very strong tradition of Scottish fiddle tunes. They're playing ancient tunes that are hundreds of years old, but they're also playing tunes from 1810, 1860, 1890, 1910, 1930, 1993, because they've never stopped being the tradition of writing tunes in the style. And that's true in modern day America as well.
Hey, I'm dirty.
Oh, napkin.
All over me.
Just get it on the table.
Okay.
Oh, get the dust buster.
Run it all over.
Just run it all over him. Yeah, I know.
Why not own napkins? We use sleeves.
Can I have the dust buster, Doreen, please?
I don't know what this is going to do for your problems.
No.
But here's a napkin.
I think Jeff's going to have to carry me outside and shake me.
You can stand up. We.
I tried, but it didn't work.
Are you hungry, or we have more substantial food?
You
No,
want
this
some
is
food?
great.
You sure?
This
Yeah,
is great.
we're-
Keep
Jeff,
going.
you want some cheese?
Keep
or
me
something?
going for a long time.
We have work to do.
So I seem to be more excited by that than you do.
I'm sorry.
All right? I mean, because of our interest in traditional music.
Yeah, that's something
it's
you're
an amazing,
knowledgeable about.
remarkable thing. But my real point is the uncorruptible part. There's no way for somebody to use that. You can't make any money.
Yeah.
You can find a little guy from Minnesota who can't sing, can barely play guitar, and who turns out to have a real verbal gift, and somehow or other it's going to come along that you can make him into a star until such time as he's not a star and then gets dropped. But you can't do that with fiddle tunes and with the dance music and the ballads and stuff. It's just a completely non-commercial act. It just sits out there and seems to go from generation to generation now, ongoing interest in other music. And
It's an issue in the Old Time Herald, because a lot of people feel that what has spawned that has been the recordings that have been available for people to hear, the reissues of the 1920s from the Milwaukee Ramblers and County Records and Rounder Records, and with the demise of the disc, the demise of the record, and probably of tape in time, and the failure of these traditional tunes and songs to be reissued on CD, there may not be the source material for people the way there was. And so, but people are not inclined to reissue these things on CD. What will happen is the issue on the table with the Old Time Herald.
Well, that's interesting, because I thought that the CD revolution was a way in which a lot of stuff was going to get heard that wasn't going to get heard.
How?
I have sensed that there's a tremendous amount of reissues going on. Companies are big and small are digging into vaults and putting things out that.
like the Robert Johnson stuff.
Well, there's the Robert Johnson stuff, but that's certainly one of the more obvious advantage of it. And it's not, Columbia has done other sets that are of some really obscure stuff, and then there's this German label, what's it called, Great Bear or
Great
something,
Bear.
which has put out all sorts of funky stuff, at least to me, maybe not to you, but I think to the average person, it seems that there's a tremendous amount of stuff getting put out on CD that just wasn't.
Rounder doesn't seem to want to do its old stuff, but Rounder has
Yeah.
changed in this direction from when it started. County Records, you know that?
I've heard of it, but I don't know anything.
Dave Evans
Probably
used
just
to do,
past the name from some reading somewhere.
reissue the CD.
Doesn't seem to be financially feasible anyway.
So,
And we're talking about stuff that was reissued on LPs from 78s.
There's a, I don't know his name, a European fellow, Johnny Parth. Do you know that name?
No.
He's a blues freak, and he is reissuing on his label, which I think is called Document,